Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have ourselves, yep, you guessed it, another Godzilla x Kong set to review. There's just been so much that has come out for this film that we've been pretty much flooded with reviews of these products on the channel lately, but unfortunately I think this might be one of the last figures that there are out currently for me to review, so I guess we'll be missing them after this, but this is obviously the Suko with Titanus Doug. This one took me a little while to find, actually. It was the very last one that I was looking for and took me the longest to find. It seems like this is the set that most of the resellers are after, so I don't know why. But it does seem like they grabbed this one right away because I've been to numerous Walmarts, all of which were loaded with everything from this film, but this set was continuously missing from everywhere until I ran across it the other day. So you can see again we've got basically your standard packaging, and obviously you can see that we've got both of these figures contained here within the front of the packaging, and then here on the back you can see that we have some more images of the figures, as well as down here a checklist of everything that is included in this line of figures, all of which I have actually reviewed here on the channel, except the Godzilla with Heat Ray. In a way, we have reviewed everything on here besides that, except the Scar King. I didn't review the regular mainline edition. I reviewed the repainted version in the 2-pack, but they're pretty much the same thing. Regardless, it looks pretty fun, so let's pop this box open and check them out. So here is our little Suko figure. We'll see how he stands. Not too bad. He also has a rock, and honestly, I can't be the only person that when they saw the packaging instantly thought it was an egg. It kind of looks like an egg to me. Even my son did the same thing, but it is obviously a rock. And then we've also got our Titanus Doug, which I haven't even seen the film yet. Somehow, this is like one of my favorite characters in the movie. I don't know what it is about this chubby lizard, but I really quite like him. But again, both figures actually look really quite nice, and I'm fairly impressed with the articulation of Suko. He really does have a lot of articulation for being such a small figure, and it seems to work pretty smoothly. And again, the sculpts as well as the paint apps of both of these look pretty decent, so definitely excited to get a closer look at these, so let's jump to it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of Suko, you can see it looks pretty decent. Definitely kind of has the likeness of the ape from the film. I think they've captured his overall likeness fairly decently. Again, the detailing doesn't look bad either. It doesn't have quite that muted look like we've seen on some of the other figures, though the apes do seem to be a little bit better than the reptiles through the course of the line. You can see his eyes are a little goofy looking. They're definitely not great. They almost look like they're trailing a little bit, so he's got kind of like a lazy eye, but we've definitely seen worse looking eyes in this line for sure, even if these are pretty goofy looking. You can also see that there's a scar painted kind of through his eye. We've got his nostrils. He has a darker gray for the face, and then a brownish tone as you move back into his head. You can see the ears sculpted out right there, and some pretty decent looking fur as you move through the course of his body. Looks like we've got an articulated neck. Yep, definitely can go left and right quite nicely. Could probably swivel, yep, all the way around. I don't know if, you've got a kind of a little bit of up and down movement as well, so some decent articulation there as you move down into his arms. Again, the arms look nice as far as the fur goes. I like how some of the fur kind of gets a little erratic as you move closer down toward his hand. You can also see that we've got articulation where the arm can come up away from the body, as well as, of course, go forward and back, and that gives you all sorts of mobility with that shoulder joint. Same deal for the elbow. Again, nice articulation that way. Can also swivel and wrist articulation. So again, he's really loaded with articulation for a small figure like this. It's quite surprising. We obviously have the hand sculpted out. The actual texturing to the hand is almost non-existent, but you can see we have a grayish tone for the hand again. As you move down through the course of his body, you can see we do have a little more articulation in the midsection with another swivel, which can completely spin around if you want to break his spine. And then as you move down a little bit further, you can see the legs also sport some decent detail as well as decent Articulation, again, we have the legs that can move forward and back and kind of swivel around a little bit, and they also have a little bit of mobility this way as well. So again, some decent articulation. He can't do splits or anything like that, but it seems like it works pretty well. And again, the knee as well. Go forward and back. Yeah, it doesn't swivel though, unfortunately, but the ankle does. As I was trying that, the ankle kind of took off on me right there, but you can see, again, ankle swivels. And the same articulation would appear in both feet and both legs, and you can see the feet, again, look pretty decent. Also painted with a gray, but yet again, not really much in the way of texturing when it comes to those areas. No paintwork on the underside of the feet either. So the Suko figure is actually pretty cool, and again, definitely one of, I would say, probably the better figures released in this line, even though his eyes are super goofy. And then we've also got that stone that he has, I guess some sort of a rock that he can toss at whatever is nearby. Apparently he is Kong's buddy in the film, according to the description on the box, so maybe he would use that rock to help Kong at some point. And then we've also got Titanus Doug, and this figure I actually think looks really nice. Like, the detailing in the face looks pretty darn good, and by no means does it have a muted look, at least in the head and neck area. It does look actually really quite nice. The eyes don't look bad as far as the paintwork goes. We don't really have a pupil or anything, but they still look pretty decent. Like, they're placed nicely. They don't look sloppy or anything. You can see the nostrils, and the teeth actually look really good for a figure in the Playmates line. Look at those teeth. They're actually really nicely sculpted and really nicely painted. They're probably the best looking teeth I think we've seen in the entire line as a whole. And you do have neck articulation for the figure, so you can kind of get like a tilt in the neck there, but it's extremely, extremely stiff. Unfortunately, no jaw articulation. Moving back here into the body, you can see again, in typical Playmates fashion, we have a bit of a muted look compared to what we see in the head and neck as we move back into the plastic areas, but the figure is completely overloaded with scoot-like scales all over the place, some a little more vibrant and more impressive than others. As you lead down here to the side, you can see the skin texture is like really, really severely muted, which is unfortunate, because it looks like it was probably a really nice sculpt to begin with. As you lead down through the course of the legs, they as well look nice. Again, you have those scoots on the upper part of the leg, but as you move down closer to the feet, they kind of taper off and disappear. The feet are nicely sculpted. The nails kind of look like they're painted with a different tone of black, but at the same time, I think they just more or less have a gloss coat on the nails, sort of giving them the look of having nail paint, which is not bad. And even that's actually not even a guarantee, because if you look at the nails on the rear foot, it doesn't look like they have anything going on. It just kind of looks like the nails on the front foot have a gloss coat, which is very confusing. And then as you move back, you have the tail. Again, the tail comes out with a really nice curve. There is some nice articulation, at least at the base of the tail here. Kind of move it around, swivel, do all of that fun stuff with the tail, but the tail isn't flexible. It can't move past that point. We do, I think, have leg articulation. Yep, so it's only forward and back leg articulation for both the front and rear leg. The underbelly also has some fairly decent detail. I actually think the skin texture, although still muted looking, looks better on the underside than it does in some of the other areas, like on the side of the creature and then up on the back. I think it looks better down here. The skin texture on the underside of the tail, though, for some reason is almost non-existent at all. And then if we take a look at the opposing side, you can see it looks okay over here. Really no paintwork on this figure at all outside of the eyes and teeth, because you just have a solid black tone for the rest of the figure with no variation of color at all. But it is still a pretty cool looking figure overall. As far as a size goes for our Suko, you are looking at about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters in height. You're not really going to get a length or anything for him. As far as Titanus Doug goes, a little under 1.5 inches, or I'd say like a hair over 3.5 centimeters. And then for a length, you are looking at about 4 3/4 inches or 12 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Golovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Suko and Titanus Doug figures, and you can see they are quite small, as you would expect them to be, and pretty much as I expected them to be coming into this release. This is exactly the size I expected these figures to be. We've also got another comparison with a Mattel Raptor and Mattel Dilophosaurus, just in case you happen to have some of those figures. And I feel like we don't really need to overdo it with comparisons this time around, so we have the 6-inch versions of Godzilla and Kong here next to our Suko and Titanus Doug figures for one final comparison to give you an idea of the fact that they are quite small. So this brand new Playmates Godzilla x Kong, the new Empire, Suko and Titanus Doug figures are pretty fun. You know, they're not really amazing. They're definitely not anything to completely go insane over, but they're fun for what they are. Again, Suko is actually a fairly impressive figure just based off of the fact that he has so much articulation for being so small. He really is overloaded with articulation and is the single most articulated figure in the line with, of course, Scar King. I would say they're probably equal when it comes to articulation, I think. So, pretty impressive when it comes to that aspect. The sculpt as well is fairly decent. It's not amazingly detailed, but it sports the type of detail you would expect for something like this. The only areas that are, you know, not really that great would be the areas of skin texture because the texturing isn't really there, but the figure still looks fairly decent as far as the sculpt goes. The eye paint is the only area that's a bit goofy on the figure, but it's not the worst thing in the world, and as I said earlier, not the worst eye paint we've seen in this line. That would go to Godzilla. We also have the rock that he's carrying, which isn't really anything to rave over. It's just a little extra that you have included in the set that's pretty decently sculpted. And then Titanus Doug, which I actually really quite like that figure. I think even though it is like the laziest when it comes to the paint apps in the entire line because there's just really nothing to it, it is still a really cool looking creature and a pretty decent sculpt. Again, you have the same pretty much typical situation on this one as you have with every other reptile in this line, where you don't really have the greatest detail in the plastic areas where it's super muted, but then you have fairly nice looking detail in the rubbery areas, so it has that same thing going on. And I will say that the teeth on that figure are the best in the entire line when it comes to the teeth of any figure. Like, they look really nice, and they're actually nicely painted on top of looking nice as far as the sculpt goes, so I have to give them some props for that. But overall, it's definitely not an insanely amazing set, but it is actually a really quite nice looking set. If you are interested, the only thing I can really say is keep checking your local Walmarts, and hopefully you'll run into it at some point if the resellers continue to steal this one from everyone. Hopefully it'll just become more common as the line goes on and as we get closer to the film and the excitement of the toy line dies down. Hopefully it'll start to show up a little bit more frequently because it is definitely a set worth picking up. So again, make sure you check your local Walmarts, grab it if you can find it, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.